Oh, how surprise us. Oh, is that in here somewhere? So most of the reimagining public safety.
Shona, we're live and recording for whenever
Okay.
you're ready to go.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, September 6th, 2022, 5:30, and welcome to the Tompkins County Legislature. If you could please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If we could have a roll call of members.
Sure. Amanda Champion,
Here.
Deborah Dawson,
Here.
Henry Granison,
Present.
Rich John.
Here.
Dan Klein,
Here.
Ann Corman,
Here.
Mike Lane,
Here.
Greg Mezzi,
Here.
Veronica Pillar, Lee Shirtliff,
Here.
Mike Sigler.
Here.
Travis Brooks will be arriving later this evening. Randy Brown,
Here.
Shauna Black,
Here.
Veronica Pillar,
Here.
with 13 members present.
Thank you, Kathy. This evening, we will not have proclamations, petitions, or communications. And just to announce that we will have executive session this evening to discuss contract negotiations and personnel issues. Now it is time for privilege of the floor. And we do have some blue cards from the public. First off is David Foote. Hi, David.
Hi, I'm here as one of probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people who live in Tompkins County, work in Ithaca, can't afford to live downtown. Of course, housing is a thing that has occupied a lot of attention over time, but there's one thing that you could do to help out people like me, and that's drop the cost of riding TCAT buses. I think that this isn't an impossible ask. It's not even improbable. There are cities across the country, South Carolina, Montana, Missouri, Florida, where this is already happening. I'd love to see Ithaca join that list. I know it's not easy. It's not simple. It's going to take negotiating between the city, the county, maybe some local institutions could kick in, as has worked in other places, but it's really necessary for those of us who are looking to get around. Like our grandparents, parents, and others, we're looking for the promises of the Green New Deal to be fulfilled, specifically in this one way, our Green New Deal. And you can use resources at hand, not just budgetary, but in energy from activists, support from constituents, other ways of just bringing this to reality. Public transportation is for everyone. It breaks down divides, decreases isolation. It's essential for people who can't afford a car, lowers emissions, makes the area safer for pedestrians, and it benefits everyone. It's just cool. Buses are cool. So I hope that you can help make this a win for Tompkins County. Do what you can to help people like me make fare free transportation here a reality. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next is Zach Nguyen.
Good evening. My name is Zachary Nguyen. Just to add to what this gentleman was just speaking about, TCAT fare boxes are broken more often than not these days. And I've been riding for free 2 out of 3 times typically. And if you would like to help the drivers out and possibly alleviate some of the bleeding of staff, I would suggest opposing further extensions of Governor Hochul's emergency powers and, the masking of everyone, because it creates a very adversarial relationship between the drivers and the passengers. It's just not necessary. An update to the issue I described behind 7-Eleven and the Hotel Ithaca. There is now a security camera behind 7-Eleven on Green Street, and there's been some apparent attempt to address the issues of drug use at the site. And the Hotel Ithaca is now employing private security 3 days a week to patrol the parking lot. I did the other day just see a guy smoking crack behind the dumpster there. It's not uncommon. I emailed a link relevant to my comments to the legislature, and I have acquired documents via FOIL, including the agreement signed between the Center for Policing Equity, co-founder Tracy Keese, and then Mayor Svante Myrick. In the city CPE document, it is laid out that CPE would be responsible for distribution and collection of non-disclosure agreements from CPE and working group members. And there is also a document describing majority CPE meetings with the city, reminiscent of the city-county CPE meetings described in Councilperson Brock's ethics complaint. My question is to legislators Travis Brooks and Shauna Black. As you were participants in the RPS collective management meetings described in Councilperson Brock's ethics complaint, did either of you sign non-disclosure agreements with Center for Policing Equity relating to reimagining public safety? I yield the remainder of my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zach Wynn. Anyone else here for privilege of the floor for the public? Do we have anyone that would like to speak via Zoom? Dominic?
I don't have anyone at this time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we will move on to municipal officials. And do we have anyone here from the city of Ithaca? Do not believe so. Okay. We are going to do a little reordering of our agenda this evening so that the staff that is here for the resolutions don't have to stay for a whole meeting. So why don't I propose that we do the consent agenda first. I believe there might be a resolution that will be pulled. And then we will do the MRB presentation about the recovery fund. And then we will move forward with the resolution that talks to the recovery fund. Okay. So why don't we start off with the consent agenda? And that's resolutions and appointments to be voted on as a group unless any member of the legislature requests that a resolution or appointment be instead included separately and individually as part of the business of standing or special committees. Appointments to the advisory boards, ID 11054. Ben Sturbank, Commissioner, Human Rights Commission, term expires December 31st, 2022. Ruth Williams, Commissioner, term expires December 31st, 2022. Teresa Fulton, Commissioner, term expires December 31st, 2023. And Lady Ajaya, Commissioner, term expires December 31st, 2024. Again, that's for the Human Rights Commission. The Air Services Board, Gary Stewart, Cornell University Representative, term expires December 31st, 2024. Lori Kohler, at-large Ithaca College Representative, term expires December 31st, 2023. Criminal Justice Advisory, Alternative to Incarceration Board, Kate Shanks Booth, Youth Services Department Representative, term expires December 31st, 2023. Climate and Sustainable Energy Advisory Board, Andrea Aguilera, at-large, term expires December 31st, 2024. Rebecca Evans, at-large, term expires December 31st, 2024. Public Safety Committee, Resolution A, authorization to enter into an agreement with Ithaca Community Radio Incorporated, tower co-location at Irish Hill Tower, ID 11093. Health and Human Services Committee, Resolution B, adjustment, True Creative Digital Images and Documents, Office for the Aging, ID 11073. Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Resolution C, budget adjustment, transfer from Highway Machinery Fund Balance, DM Fund, to Automotive Fuel, ID 11082. Resolution D,
Hold.
Okay, we're going to pull Resolution D. And Planning Development Environmental Quality Committee, Resolution E, Budget Adjustment, Tourism Promotion, ID 11068. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Randy Brown and seconded by Veronica Pillar. And let's do a roll call vote.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Okay. Randy Brown,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
14 ayes, 0 nos.
Thank you. And why don't we go ahead and do Resolution D that was pulled from Facilities and Infrastructure Committee? Mike Lane, do you mind bringing that forward?
At all. I think possibly Dan has an amendment for it. Let's do authorization to partner on federal safe streets and roads for all planning grant opportunity. That's ID 11083, and I so move.
Thank you. And can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Deborah Dawson. And Dan Klein.
Thank you. So I pulled it because I just wanted to make a small amendment, and I checked with our county highway superintendent and others to make sure it was okay, and it seemed like it's okay with everybody. So it's on packet page 15 in the fifth whereas. It lists all the municipalities that are partnering with this grant application. And I just wanted to add Tompkins County to that list, just to make sure we are covered.
That's friendly.
Is that friendly, Deb? Okay. Does anyone need to hear a repeat of what's being changed? Okay. Let's do a roll call vote.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
14 ayes, 0 nos.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Dan and Deborah. Next, it is time for us to move to the presentation from MRB. And Dan Klein, would you like to make the introduction?
Yes, so if we are about to get a presentation about some of the updates and thoughts that have gone into the guidelines and application for the Community Recovery Fund grant program. This legislature initiated this process over a year ago. And again, if we pass it tonight, it will launch and it will take place over the next 2 months. So before we vote on the resolution, we want to hear from the consultants that we have brought on board to run this program, the MRB group. And I believe Tracy Verrier is going to start.
Hi there. So I know that you have a busy meeting tonight, so I'm going to try to do this very quickly and efficiently for you. So we've been working with the legislative committee for the last couple of months, getting the program guidelines and other documents ready. Also working with staff on promotion and key aspects of the program. So those documents are in your packet for review. Tonight, I am going to kind of just run through a series of things pretty quickly, pointing to some key items within the guidelines. The two areas that I really want to talk the most about are the approval process and the program promotion, which will be starting up assuming that the guidelines are approved. So I'm going to run through these first few slides pretty quickly just to touch on key items. First of all, here's your team. Here's your consulting team. Michael and Scott are both on the call today to help answer any questions. Michael is our Director of Economic Development at MRB Group. He's the client manager. I'm Tracy, I'm the project manager, and then Scott is with WCP Consultants, and he is going to help with the administration of many of the grants once the awards are made, but also with some upfront assistance with the applications. And then Matt's around to answer questions as needed. He has a lot of municipal experience as well, but you'll mostly be dealing with the three of us. So for an application round, assuming that the guidelines are approved tonight, we're hoping to launch the program in the next couple of days, certainly by Thursday. If there's any minor adjustments we need to make, we can do that in a couple of days and open up the round tomorrow or on Thursday. And then the application will be available on the website, and we will have 3 information sessions over the course of the next few weeks. One on the 14th with the Human Services Coalition. This will be a virtual webinar focused mostly on nonprofit applicants. Then on the 15th, we're planning another webinar that is focused more on business applicants with the Chamber and Ithaca Area Economic Development and the Downtown Ithaca Alliance. That both of those webinars will be recorded and will be added. The videos from those will be added to the website so that people can view them later if needed. Like if they miss it, they still have access to that resource. And then I'm working on scheduling another session tentatively for the 23rd, which would be in person. And it would be a little bit more general based on who is actually attending that session. And that's just an opportunity for folks that maybe aren't as comfortable with an online session as others are, which there are plenty of those in the world. So those are 3 ways to get some of the information out. We'll also be offering ongoing technical assistance and support to applicants throughout. We're going to encourage people to reach out and have a conversation with us before they submit their application so we can make sure that all of the eligibility is there and that the scoring criteria are being met. We are implementing a review deadline. So any draft applications that we receive up until October 15th, we will provide feedback and give those applicants a chance to make any changes or edits they need to before the deadline, which will be October 31st. If someone submits a draft after the 15th, we'll do the best we can to give them feedback, but we can't guarantee it at that point. We just have to be realistic about capacity. So the review deadline will be the 15th, and then the actual submission deadline will be the 31st. We won't take any applications after the 31st. From the 31st to about the 9th, the consultant team will review the applications and do preliminary scoring, do any necessary underwriting, those kinds of activities. And then from about the 14th to the 23rd, the committee, the legislative committee, will do their review, scoring, and recommendations. And then we're hoping that at the December 6th legislature meeting, we'll have a slate of projects for you to review and approve for funding, as well as there's a number that you'll be reviewing and discussing individually. So we built into the program guidelines, program priorities that were set by you as a group. These were in the RFP for our services. So these go back throughout the time of the conversations around this program. And so there are things like meeting unmet service needs within the community and responding to the impacts of COVID-19, aligning with the comprehensive plan. So these are all outlined in the program guidelines and came directly from what your priorities have been. Eligible applicants, nonprofits, only 501c3s and 501c19s, which are veterans organizations, are eligible. That's ARPA guidelines. There's not much we can do about that, unfortunately, even though there might be other types of nonprofits that would be great to support. Those are the ones we legally can support. Impacted small businesses, again, the definition of impacted is set in the ARPA guidelines. So that's just what it is. We also included educational institutions with annual budgets under $200 million to be able to support some of the smaller institutions, healthcare providers, obviously because of the pandemic impacts. And then we also included municipalities and government entities. Some of the things that the group has wanted to see out of these projects, they're hoping to see workforce initiatives, childcare projects, broadband, water and sewer, but then also the small business relief and, relief for nonprofits that were impacted by the pandemic as well. We came up with the scoring criteria. So each project will go ahead, the consultants will do a preliminary score based on these criteria. Then the committee will kind of finalize some scores. They'll have the opportunity to adjust anything. Maybe we missed something, or, obviously the priorities are going to be driven by the committee. So that item in particular will be a strong point of conversation during the committee process. But this scoring will help to guide which projects end up being recommended for funding. Then the approval process. So the way that we have this set up, as I mentioned, we as a consultant team will review the projects, confirm eligibility, do underwriting, and we'll take a first pass at scoring. Some of the scoring criteria are kind of yes, no questions. Those ones will be easy. Others are up to, some judgment, which is where the committee will come in to review our preliminary scoring and really finalize that. So after the consultant team, the committee will review all of the applications, discuss them all, finalize the scoring, and then look at determining some funding recommendations. All of the recommendations that are made by the committee will go to the full legislature. All of the projects that are under a request of 250,000 will be presented as a batch, but as any other batch of resolutions you might have, an individual legislator would be able to pull one out if you wanted to discuss it. But we won't be looking to discuss all those applications individually at the legislative level. All the applications over $250,000 ask, we are anticipating that you'll discuss individually or have the opportunity to do that, to just confirm the scoring and understand what those larger asks are. And then ultimately the full legislature makes that decision about what is awarded and what is not awarded. Once the program guidelines are approved, it's all about getting the word out and getting the information out. There is a webpage set up on the Tompkins County website right now for the program. There's on the homepage, one of the slider items is this page. And right now people can sign up for the newsletter. So as any additional information comes out, we'll be sent, or Dominic will be working with Dominic to send out updates to that list. And we'll continue to add information as time goes on. It's not unusual to have an FAQ after a couple of weeks as questions start to come in, or once those sessions are done, we'll post the videos here. So this will be a one centralized location for all of that information to land. And then Dominic and the county staff will also help us to do outreach via all sorts of newsletters and partners, and working with partners with social media to get the word out about the program and drive people towards this website, drive them to contact us as the consulting team for assistance, and hopefully get as many applications as we can muster up in this pretty short time frame. So next steps, hopefully approval of the guidelines and the application and instructions tonight. We'll open up as soon as possible, get the word out about the program, and we'll start having meetings with potential applicants, have those information sessions, provide the technical assistance, and do that pre-submission review. And in the next couple of months, you'll see that start coming back to you in the form of award recommendations. So that's my spiel tonight, but we're certainly open to questions. If there's any questions about process or what comes next, by all means.
Mike Lane.
Hi, that was very clear. Nice presentation. Wondered, do you have any feeling yet what kind of demand there's going to be for applications here? Is there any feeling that you might be overwhelmed, or do you think you can handle it? Where are we?
So we don't have a true feeling yet of how much will come in. I think once the guidelines are out there and we start promoting it, we'll start to see that. But between our team and Scott, we can always pull in some other folks from MRB if we need some assistance. So whatever that flow is, we'll find a way to manage it, and I think we'll be able to handle it regardless. But it's a pretty lucrative, it's a good program, and hopefully there will be a lot of businesses and nonprofits that want to take advantage of it. So we'll hope for the best and hope we have huge deal flow and that we'll have to manage our capacity, but I wouldn't worry about the ability to actually complete the work.
I like your response. Thank you.
Henry Grandison.
Yes, I know that when we were planning it, we also wanted to specify specifically do DEI work. What plans do you have to include DEI opportunities?
Yeah, I think so. The program priorities include a social justice priority. And then I think also some of the outreach will be more through strategic partners, making sure that we're reaching groups that are working with special populations and underserved populations to bring that work to the forefront and ensure that we get applications in that realm.
Thank you.
The scoring criteria also can contemplate some of the DEI goals of the program. So that will be part of our scoring system.
Okay.
And just for those of you that are wondering what DEI is, diversity, equity, inclusion. I just stopped myself there for a second. Okay, Randy Brown and then Ann Corman.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. It helped me a lot. Is that PowerPoint that you just showed, is that available? I know all the information's in the packet you gave, but I don't think that PowerPoint itself was in the packet, was it?
It was not in the packet, but I'll send it to Brittany and she can, I'm sure, distribute it as she has some of the other ones for the committee.
Is the timeline currently on the webpage showing that?
The timeline is not on there yet. We'll put all of the deadlines and everything up there. We want to make sure we get through the approval process before we start pushing too much information onto that page.
Thank you. And lastly, scoring. So MRB will do the initial scoring before it goes to the committee. Is that how it works?
Yeah, that's just to keep the conversation going so people can review ahead. So it's really just preliminary what we'll do to start the conversation and keep the conversation moving. Because if people are in agreement with what we've done, great, easy conversation rather than having to go through every scoring criteria for every single project at the committee level.
Great, thank you.
Ann Corman and then Greg Mezzi.
Thank you. So a couple questions. In the presentation that you had and in what we have in our packet here, it says round one opens, and I know we talked about it in committee, that we're basically only having one round and we'll only have a second round if there's some money left over. So I'm just want to make sure we're clear about that. And if we're having only one round, what goes out to the public, because I want to make sure that they're not thinking there's going to automatically be a second round.
Yeah, so we do have it in the guidelines that we could have a second round if there's funding available, but I would say let's encourage people to try to get applications in for this round because, if there is an abundance of applications and there's an abundance of good projects, I could see a situation where all of this funding could be committed in a first round. So there could be additional rounds, but I wouldn't necessarily have anyone count on there being a second round moving forward.
That'll be explicit in when this gets out to the public. Is that correct about probably?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that will say that there could be a second round is the guidelines will say if needed for additional rounds. But we can explicitly say that within, some of the text on the webpage.
Okay, thank you. And then two more questions I think I have. So it says round one in your presentation, it said round one opens tomorrow.
Sometime this week. Yeah. Tomorrow, Thursday, depending on if there's any tweaking we need to do after the meeting tonight.
And what does that exactly mean? Does that mean applications will be ready? We'll be ready to receive applications?
Yep, so to launch it, we'll put all the information on the website. We'll use the list of emails that Dominic has already been collecting about the program from interested folks, and they'll be notified that it's open. A press release will go out. We'll start social mediating it up. And so there will be a launch of the program. But yes, the application will become available and we'll be ready to start taking applications if they come in quickly, or having those conversations with potential applicants about their projects.
Okay, so in the next couple of days, applications will be on that page.
Yes.
And be sent out, send out links to that. And you'll be able to receive applications right away.
Yep.
When that comes out. Okay. And the rest of the timeline, I understand. And the last question, I know we're working on getting times for the committee to meet, to go over your recommendations. And I'm not sure if at the last committee meeting we decided, so we might need to decide tonight whether those meetings are going to be public or not.
I think the plan, because it is a legislative committee, those meetings will go through the normal open meetings law process, as I understand it. And then if there's any proprietary information or financial information, that would go into an executive session with that committee.
Okay.
Is that correct, Dan? Is that how you understood it?
That is, I wouldn't mind hearing from our county attorney if we need a little more advice on this.
I think it should be just as was proposed. What's your question? I think it was nicely put.
That's
Yeah.
So you concur?
Yeah, it'll be an open session until we come up onto something that can't be an open session.
I
Okay.
would say so, but I can't imagine what can't be open session if we're giving away public funds, so.
Unless we're discussing an applicant's proprietary information, in which case, yeah.
It's one of those things you'll know it when you see it, I suspect. And I'm only a phone call away if there's an issue, so.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I'm clear and I've been getting a lot of questions from the community. So this helps me a lot. So thank you very much for all your work on this.
Greg Mezzi?
Yeah, I just want to express some gratitude to the members of the committee and to MRB for getting this together and getting this. This was pretty comprehensive and seems like there's great guidelines and great momentum. And I know a lot of us were anxious to get this going and get these funds out, back into the community, doing some real good. So look forward to the outcomes. And it seems like MRB hopefully will be a great partner for us. So I appreciate you guys taking the time today.
Thanks, Greg. I would also like to second what Greg said. MRB has come into all of our meetings fully prepared, very knowledgeable. And I feel like over the past year, we've, as legislators, kind of all been running in different directions, thinking that we had some idea on how to spend these funds and get them out the door. And it's been nice to have the professionals step in and kind of guide us to the right direction. So thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
I'll just throw in a couple of things before we vote. So Dominic has put a sign up on the webpage for newsletters for this topic, for updates and newsletters. And we have last count, there were over 900 people that had signed up. So to answer Mike Lane's question, I would expect quite a bit of interest, especially at the beginning. The other thing I was going to say was about the question about reaching diverse audiences is that Dominic is working closely with this process, our county communications director, and is going to use his normal channels that get information out, which I think we would all agree includes a lot of diverse audiences in this county. So just wanted to be aware that, we're going to use all our resources to reach everybody about this.
Thank you, Dan. And did you want to move the resolution?
Yes, please. I would like to move the resolution that's on packet page 28 for approval of the Community Recovery Fund Program guidelines.
I could have a seconder, please. Seconded by Deborah Dawson. And any discussion for this resolution? Any comment? Okay, let's vote on the resolution. Aye.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
yes,
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
14 ayes, 0 nos.
Thank you very much, MRB, for coming to our meeting. You are certainly welcome to stay. We're going to have a great time this evening learning about the 2023 budget, but you're also very much so welcome to leave. Deborah Dawson?
Yeah, I would just like to add my thanks to Tracy and her group and her subcontractor and Dan Klein for moving this forward. This was like riding a wild bronc at the rodeo, and we appreciate your horsemanship.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, let's actually go back. I see that Patrick Mailer is here from the city of Ithaca to join us as a municipal official. Hello, Patrick.
Hi, folks. How's it going?
Good. Thank you for joining us today.
Of course, my apologies about my camera being off. It is raining very hard in College Town, unless you like to stare at a mop. I'm going to keep it this way
No problem.
for now. But yeah, really quickly, George McGonigal and I are switching just for this month. He had a commitment today, so you'll hear from him in 2 weeks about what we do at council. But for at least what we have planned for tomorrow, assuming no major changes that I get to be told of, we'll be getting the presentation of the Community Justice Center's work plans, and we expect to have a vote on the approval of their work plan. We'll also be formally agreeing with the congressionally directed spending for the conference center downtown. We'll be voting on the East Hill Fire Station, that entire project, and it moving from College to Dryden Road. We'll also be looking at the new TCAT agreement. We'll be looking at a couple of specific Ithaca Green New Deal grants, and that's basically it. I'm more than happy to answer any questions folks might have about what we're doing, what we're looking at, and most likely get back to you on most of those answers, but happy to try.
Any questions or comments for Patrick? Randy Brown?
Hi, Patrick. Thanks for that report. I noticed that there was a couple groups that had approached the city about conditions in the winter for sidewalks and things like that. Has there been any movement on that? I've heard quite a few people, especially elderly people, people with disabilities that really struggle to get around in the winter time. I was curious where you were going with that as a city.
Yep. Yeah. So our city administration committee, which isn't the one I sit on, but they met not last Wednesday, 'cause it was the first, but they met the fourth Wednesday, and they're discussing that exactly. I know I'm very supportive, at least specifically what they're looking at. They're looking for basically a revamped program to have snow-free sidewalks and crosswalks. I know that they've been presenting to city administration. I can double check really quickly to see if they had any movement on it. I don't believe they had any movement on it, as it's not in our agenda for all of council tomorrow. But my guess is that they're still talking about it. They're still hearing from folks, and I can be sure to let you know if there's any specific feedback.
Great. You get a few months. Thanks.
Thanks, Randy. Patrick, I just wanted to bring forth in regards to TCAT. We've been in negotiations with the city and Cornell, and I just wanted to bring forth the idea of maybe even having TCAT come to your meeting, or asking for their side of the negotiations, because I think that might be what's missing in making your decision moving forward. And I think it's really important to hear about some of their concerns. So I'll put a little bit of a bug in your ear. And I hope that the information is shared with you and your colleagues in regards to the stance that TCAT's taking during those negotiations.
Sure, I'll be sure to reach out to them and the 15 commissioners or board members today and double check with Julie, the city clerk, to see if they can present their side or share anything during public comment.
Sounds great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Patrick? Okay. Thank you, Patrick, for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. Stay dry.
Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your meeting. Oh, I'm trying.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Now let's open it up for legislators. Deborah Dawson.
Yeah, this is just a personal note and a shout out to the good people at our recycling center. Most of you know, my husband and I are in the process of downsizing. We've been doing the Swedish death cleaning thing, and we had a lot of old furniture and stuff that we wanted to take to the recycling center for the landfill. So we rented a van and we went there, and I have to tell you, they were so polite. They were so courteous. Not only that and helpful, but they were actually like happy. They made us feel like they were really glad to see us. I've never had such a positive experience in any government office anywhere. And without naming names, I just really want to say hats off to the management of our recycling center for having such a helpful and happy staff.
Thank you, Deborah. Mike Lane and then Ann Corman.
We've talked about Dryden being the crown jewel of Tompkins County before. And I wanted to tell you about something that's going on in the Dryden area that I think is kind of impressive. We have a strong group forming a business association. We have a lot of active businesses interested in trying to promote our community. And it's not just Dryden Village. It extends to the outskirts of the town of Dryden, and Freeville, of course, is also. Governor Hochul announced that there would be what's called the New York Forward Grant Program. And we know over the past few years, the state has conducted grant programs basically targeted for cities. Ithaca's tried many times to get it. Cortland received a $10 million grant. But the smaller villages have been pretty much left out of that grant program. Well, Governor Hochul's program is aimed at smaller villages, up to $4.5 million. And it's the first round this year. Dryden, of course, is in the Southern Tier group. Another village that's going to be trying for it is Homer, which is in the Central New York group. So they are not competing against one another. But there was a meeting held last week to garner public opinion. And we had over 50 people at the fire station, which was a very good turnout for this. The village has put in its letter of intent and has been working with the Toma group out of Cortland for help. The nice thing about this New York Forward program is that it recognizes that there are limitations in staffing in small villages for this kind of preparation, grant applications, and actually has money as part of this program to assign a state person to the applicants to help them with the process. So I think that's kind of innovative and is kind of exciting. So we're watching what's happening in Dryden. It's putting us forward and looking forward to seeing our community be successful. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Ann Corman and then Greg Muzzy.
Thank you. I first off wanted to thank TCAT for sending an electric bus again to the Trumansburg Fair Parade. And we had a nice turnout in the electric vehicle contingent. So thank you again for that. And also want to thank the Tompkins County Employee Picnic Committee for doing what I thought was an excellent job. I don't know what the numbers, it seemed like there was more people, more employees that came this past week. And again, I don't know the numbers, but I believe there was a greater percentage of fun had at that employee picnic. I know I had a lot of fun. And the cornhole tournament was great, more food vendors. And speaking of the cornhole tournament, I would be remiss if I didn't say that myself and Jackie from Workforce were beaten 21-12 by a team called Friends of the Ledge, made up of Lisa Holmes and Dominic Recchio. Wow. Both who are here in the room. And so I just want you to rethink the name of your team at least, because I didn't feel very friendly when you beat us pretty badly. But other than that, I had a great time. So thank you for everybody who made that happen.
So Annie, they said that all this weekend they were working on the budget in previous weekends. My guess is they've just been playing cornhole the whole time.
I don't think they were. Otherwise, I don't think we would have gotten the 12 points. Just saying they took a little while to warm up.
Okay. Next year. Let's see here. Greg, I think you had your hand up before.
Yeah, I put it down and covered what I just wanted to make sure we thanked and recognize those that put the employee picnic together. It was a great time, and I know it's a lot of hard work, but Ann said most of everything I was going to say.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. Any other legislator here? Veronica Pillar?
Thank you. Yesterday was Labor Day, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. Happy belated Labor Day to everyone. Many folks get the day off from work to celebrate really worker organizing and labor power in this country, and to recognize the importance of workers fighting for, fair conditions, living wages, things like that. Our wonderful weekends and typical 5-day weeks when there's no Labor Day are due to the labor movement long past, but like most movements, there's still a lot of work to be done. I went to a really inspiring rally on Labor Day yesterday, led by some organizing workers locally, and I'm excited to, see where this movement goes from there and keep supporting it.
Thank you, Veronica. Anyone else for legislator comment? Okay. I am going to move on to a very quick chairs report. I also would like to send my appreciation to our staff. We had a really wonderful time, and it was nice, I think, as legislators to be able to meet people that we don't traditionally see in our day-to-day. I was able to meet some of our friends from DSS, some of our nurses from the health department, and it was a really fun time. So thanks for all that organized. I also would like to welcome all of our local students back into the classrooms. This morning, I said goodbye to my now 5th grader and a brand new freshman at Ithaca High School. And tomorrow I will say goodbye to my senior at Ithaca High School. And I was actually really happy they're leaving because it's been a very long summer. But I would like to remind everyone to keep an eye out for the buses, because I think we go 2-3 months without seeing buses on the road, and they're definitely out in full force. And whenever they have their yellow lights and their red lights on, we need to make a stop so that we don't hit children and they can stay safe in the buses. I would also like to send out recognition for our school staff and our teachers who are working so very hard to make sure that our schools are safe and that our kids are learning. I know that there's been a bit of a teacher shortage here in Ithaca, and I know that our superintendent as well as administrators are working really hard to fill some of those openings from the summer. I also want everyone to be aware that next week is Welfare Workers Week, and I wanted to thank all the staff at DSS whose work empowers our children and their families in our community. Many times we see that they are key in making sure that the families come first, and in many cases, we try to keep the families together. This work is extremely important, and I know that the legislature is proud of what our staff do. Child welfare is one of our largest divisions in Tompkins County, and the work happens a lot behind the scenes. So thank you, and we appreciate the work that you do. And lastly, several legislators and I had the pleasure of welcoming Senator Gillibrand on her recent visit to Cornell to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act and investments in climate and debt relief for our local farms. We did learn about ground covers, as Veronica had mentioned at one point, and it was great to hear from the researchers at Cornell and how their work is impacted positively by the legislation. We also were able to see how local farms are benefiting from the programs. And that appears to be my chair's report. Next, we are going to move on in our agenda, and the moment that we've all been waiting for, Lisa Holmes, County Administrator, is here to roll out our 2023 budget. Let's give it up for Lisa Holmes.
Thank you for that. Need some walk-on music, maybe. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so thank you, everyone. I have about probably 40-minute or so presentation. I'm going to move it along as quickly as I can, maybe 30 minutes. I have about 40 slides. I'm going to go through them quickly. So probably best to save questions until the end unless it's a brief clarifier. And I just want to also start off by thanking both Norma Jane, our budget director, and Samantha, our budget analyst, for all their assistance in preparing the books that you have before you tonight and everything that's in them. Quite literally, they were working on them until 5 minutes before they were delivered. So let's see. I'll jump right in to the bottom line, which is that the 2023 recommended operating budget totals nearly $208 million. It includes a recommended tax levy of $53 million, which is an increase of 1.46% over the 2022 levy amount. In April, at the budget retreat, the legislature went with a recommended 1.88% increase to produce a maintenance of effort budget. And we were able to achieve that and come in even a little lower at the 1.46%. The estimated property tax cap for 2023 is 2.59%, and we are well below that. If adopted, this budget would mean an $83 decrease in the annual tax bill on a median priced home of $225,000. Recommended budget also includes an increase in the solid waste fee of $5 to support the operations at the Recycling Materials Management Department. On the capital side, we're proposing a capital budget of $121 million, and a little more to come on that topic in a little bit. So the overview begins with a larger economic and fiscal indicators in the environment under which we're operating and the many forces that shape the county budget. And this year, I'll just say they're a mixed bag. Maybe that's the case every year, but it certainly feels like it this year. Starting with our unemployment rates, it's still the case that Tompkins County's unemployment rate is lower than our surrounding counties and the rest of New York State. In July, our unemployment rate was 3.2%. This is typically considered to be an indicator of a strong economy. People can find work if they want it. There continues to be a demand for workers across industries and across job titles, locally and across the state. And looking at year-over-year comparisons, our unemployment rate is even lower than last year's rate at this time when we were at 4.3%. The downward trend in unemployment is true for New York State as a whole as well. Contrasting that with inflation, July's inflation rate was 8.5%, which was down from a 40-year high of 9.1% in June. And while there's been a slight slowdown in the cost of gasoline, electricity costs have accelerated and prices have continued to increase for food, housing, and used vehicles. The effects of inflation hurt individuals who are on fixed incomes the most, and inflation really has a multi-layered effect on the county's budget. On the capital budget, supply chain issues complicate and prolong capital projects, and the cost of parts and materials have increased dramatically in many cases. Ordering vehicles for the county's fleet has been delayed. In operating budgets, the price of fuel as well as electricity has driven up the cost of doing business. We'll see that later on in the operating budget. Conversely, as inflation drives up prices, the county will see sales tax revenues increase so long as consumers continue to make purchases. But prolonged periods of inflation can increase the need for supportive services offered by the county, such as SNAP and income supports. And as you probably know, the Federal Reserve has decisively been increasing interest rates throughout 2022 to increase the cost of borrowing and quell the demand for goods and services. And these hikes have led to higher costs for mortgages, car loans, and other consumer and business borrowing. The goal, of course, is to slow the economy enough to ease inflationary pressures, yet not so much as to trigger a recession. It's speculated that short-term interest rates may move up to 4% by next year. So this next slide is consumer sentiment, which is an economic indicator measuring the degree of optimism that consumers feel about the overall state of the economy and their personal financial situation. It's also an indicator of future consumption and savings based on people's expected financial situation, their sentiments about the economy, unemployment, and savings capability. And higher values, of course, signal a boost in consumers' confidence toward the future, where they are prone to make more purchases. Lower values indicate pessimism toward the future developments in the economy and a tendency to save more and spend less. As you can see in this chart, consumer sentiment has dropped to levels below where we were during the pandemic. As of July, it was 51.5 on this consumer sentiment scale. So next, we're looking at the stock market, and the Dow Jones includes America's largest publicly traded companies across a range of industries. And the stock market regained ground since the pandemic-related shutdowns that you can see in 2020, but it's been dropping a bit in 2022. The most recent news from the Federal Reserve after last week's meeting discussing further interest rates hikes led to a drop last week, as higher interest rates will help corral inflation but hurt investment prices. So we're looking at so far a year-to-date loss of 11% in 2022. Now we're shifting to look at some more indicators, local indicators of need, starting with the number of households on Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, otherwise known as food stamps or SNAP. SNAP's a very important program to address food insecurity, and the number of SNAP participants tend to rise during economic downturns and fall during times of economic recovery when the recovery reaches low-income households. So it's a very responsive program to assist families during economic downturns. We can see over the last 10 years that SNAP caseloads have declined overall. However, they're up 9% from June of last year to June of this year. And this graph shows each year's SNAP numbers. As you can see, the 2022 year-to-date SNAP numbers are in purple. The green lines indicate the 2021 numbers. September of last year marked the end of the expanded unemployment benefits, and SNAP numbers have been on the rise roughly since then. So there may be a correlation there, but at any rate, they have increased since 2021 and then also looking at temporary assistance to needy families, or TANF. Again, it's a federal block grant program passed through to states and localities that provides income assistance. There's a limited lifetime benefit of 5 years for TANF, and there is no county share that goes into it. So Tompkins County's numbers on TANF have declined significantly again over the last 10 years. However, over the last year, there has been an increase of about 3% of individuals on TANF. And then once a family or an individual reaches the 5-year limit and is no longer eligible for TANF, they become eligible for safety net assistance. With safety net, there isn't a time limit and there is a local share involved. 71% is borne by the county and 29% picked up by New York State. So in Tompkins County, again, we've seen an overall decline in safety net cases. And during the pandemic, cases continued to decline in large part because there were many other federal and state supports that came into play, like expanded unemployment benefits, stimulus monies to households, and the eviction moratorium. But notably now, safety net cases are up 9% from where they were last year. So these are early indicators that we should be paying attention to see if they're merely going to be blips on the radar or if they become longer-term trends. Here's a side-by-side comparison of Tompkins County TANF and safety net numbers, both again of which are on an overall decline. So now I'm going to get into some of the major drivers that impact the 2023 budget. These are the main components that make up the maintenance of effort budget. And we're starting, I'll start on the revenue side of the equation with sales taxes. So after property taxes, sales taxes are the largest component of revenue in the county's budget. And Tompkins County's average annual sales tax growth has been approximately 3.4% over the past decade. Two major outliers were in 2020 when the local economy essentially shut down and our colleges shut down due to the pandemic, which was unprecedented. That was followed by a rebound year in 2021 in which sales tax grew by 23.8% over the bad year. But 2021 also marked our best year on record. So excluding those 2 years, our 10-year average annual growth in sales tax was 2.9%, which was very strong. Here's a visual representation of the annual sales tax revenues from 2019 to date. 2019 is the blue trend line, followed by the year of the pandemic, 2020, which was the green line on the bottom, followed by the dramatic recovery in 2021, which is the yellow line. And then here we are in 2022 year to date, which is the red line. So we have been outpacing our 2021 sales tax receipts so far, except for what might be the start of a dip in June of this year. So overall, sales tax has been quite strong for us, but again, it's an elastic revenue and it's very subject to fluctuations in the economy. A positive outcome from this year's state budget is that the state ended the diversion of county sales taxes for state purposes. This amounted to nearly $700,000 total annually that was previously diverted, which will now be restored for local use in the county. So I factored these revenues into the sales tax forecast for 2023. And so for 2023, the sales tax revenue is estimated to be $40.58 million. And how I arrived at that estimation is by using the actual sales tax received in 2021, our last full year on record, and a good year, and adding the $700,000 in restored diversions that we know we'll be getting. So that final amount is a 1.7% increase over the actual sales tax received in 2021. So given what we've seen with past performance, I don't think this is unrealistic. At the same time, I think it's a fairly measured approach given what we're seeing with some of the previous indicators that I've mentioned. Next is casino revenue, and I'm estimating 2.1 million in 2023. Again, this estimate is based on past performance. We had been conservative about budgeting for this source of revenue in the past because the county had not received it for very long and we didn't have a track record. And then in 2020, the casinos closed down due to the pandemic. They came back strong in 2021. Now that we have a track record, 2.1 million appears to be a realistic number. Again, we are on pace in the current year, 2022, for 2.3 million in casino revenues. Next, I'll cover the expenditure side of the budget drivers. Before I get there, I'm going to take a quick water break. Okay. So I'll start with the labor costs. So we have current contracts in place for our blue collar, white collar, and road patrol employees, and this makes up 85% of our workforce. So all of those negotiated salary increases are built into the 2023 budget, and we are currently in negotiations with the corrections unit. In the recommended budget is an increase of 32 positions across 14 departments, many of which did not require over target requests. 11 positions in the health department were fully funded through an increase in state aid. 9 other positions were fully funded through other departments' targets. 10 positions are one-time multi-year requests through Reimagining Public Safety. And 3 others are related to succession planning and will not be on the payroll after 2023. The budget also increases the salaries of 4 titles that would otherwise fall below the new county's living wage of $16.61 per hour. Additionally, we are seeing a decrease in fringe costs from 2022 to 2023, mostly due to a decrease in pension costs, workers' comp, and healthcare insurance. We expect that our local fringe rate will be 44.19% in 2023. Again, looking at the county's employee roster would include 796 in 2023, approximately 750 full-time and 46 part-time. The next major budget driver on the expenditure side is the Ithaca Airport. I discussed this at length during our budget retreat in April and can share some more details with you now as they're becoming clearer. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the level of air service at the Ithaca Tompkins International Airport was sufficient to sustain operations without the need for local subsidization. In December of 2019, the airport completed a $35 million terminal expansion and modernization project. The project was funded through a combination of state and federal grants and $12 million of local bonding. In that year, passenger enplanements out of the airport were at about 109,000. This is important because the number of enplanements generate passenger facilities charges, or PFCs, which were anticipated to be used to cover the debt service on the terminal expansion project. So fast forward past the pandemic, when the global and national airline industry took a huge hit, and at the Ithaca Airport in 2020, enplanements were at 30% of where they were in 2019. And in 2021, enplanements were at 50%. The current PFC revenue generated by these enplanements is now insufficient to cover the airport's debt service on the terminal project as was previously expected. And then in 2022, the loss of American Airlines and the slow rebound in air service from the pandemic has also led to a gap in funding for airport operations. Without assistance to bridge the gap, the airport will not be able to offer competitive airline rates and charges to maintain the existing airlines or attract new carriers, nor will it be able to balance its operating budget. The 2023 recommended budget includes a series of 3 diminishing one-time over-target requests to assist the airport through a period of recovery. Approximately 1.3 million in 2023, 800,000 in 2024, and 300,000 in 2025. The recommended budget additionally includes approximately 342,000 to pay half the debt service on the airline, the terminal project, with the remainder to be covered through PFC revenues. It's expected that the county is going to need to cover the debt service at least through the next 3 to 5 year period until enplanements increase and PFC revenues rebound. So recognizing this significant investment of public dollars toward the airport's recovery, the airport leadership has embarked upon a 3 to 5 year airport recovery strategy with a multi-pronged approach to expand new air service, retain existing air service, collaborate with partners, maximize non-airline revenue, maximize customs and general aviation revenue, and reduce expenses. The airport director will be sharing this plan at the next Facilities and Infrastructure Committee. So major impact for 2023. The other major budget driver of note in the 2023 budget is the county's capital program. In short, it's a $121 million budget to meet the county's needs for operations, information technology, energy, fleet, highway, infrastructure, as well as other needs. And there's going to be a more fulsome presentation on the capital budget further along in the expanded budget committee meetings. So tonight there's just this one summary overview slide. Honestly, each slide in this presentation could be an hour-long presentation in and of itself. But in short, we're seeing that the effects of inflation and supply chain issues that are impacting the costs of a few particular capital projects. For one, the green facilities phase 1 project has increased from $7.3 million to $14.4 million. And that is a project that is slated to begin this year through 2023. I'm recommending that we move forward with phase 1 for a number of reasons. But at this point, green facilities phases 2 and 3 are postponed on the capital plan because the costs of those phases have also escalated and we currently cannot afford them. We also have another project at the airport that is being deferred. It's the airport rescue firefighting snow removal equipment building, affectionately known as SRE. This project has been on the airport's improvement plan as a required upgrade per the FAA. It's a $19.3 million project total with a $5.2 million local share. And it's currently been deferred with the FAA's permission because, again, we simply cannot afford to complete it at this point. The airport is not generating the PFC charges to pay for it. The 2023 recommended budget includes approximately $1 million to support capital investment. This is about 1.93% of the 2022's property tax levy. It's greater than in previous years because the present need is greater to sustain our capital obligations.
could you please clarify? So that's an amount you're recommending in your 2023 budget. You're just comparing it to the 2022 tax levy.
Correct. In the past, we've contributed anywhere from 0.5 to 1%.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, on a positive note, there are no significant increases expected in total local cost of mandates for 2023. There have been slight increases in the cost of some of our mandated programs, which have been made up for slight decreases in other programs. So it's essentially been a wash. On the assigned counsel front, a recent court ruling in Manhattan granted an increase in the rates of legal representation for New York City, while directing the governor and state legislature to complete a statutory increase in the rates statewide. So for Tompkins County, the attorney's rates would increase from $75 an hour to $158 an hour, which would amount to approximately a $1.8 million increase in the budget for assigned counsel. But the bottom line here is that we fully expect that the state will be absorbing those increases and it will not be a local cost for the counties.
I like your optimism.
Yeah.
Ross. The 2023 recommended budget includes a 3% cost of living adjustment for the county sponsored agencies. Again, includes contractual increase for Ithaca area economic development. It includes approximately $772,000 in mostly one-time over target support for sponsored or partner agencies. It also includes an over target increase for the county's ongoing contribution to TC3, as well as one-time funds to continue support of TC3's capital program and workforce initiative. Here's what the requests look like for the 2023 budget. 7.2 million requested total and 5.6 million recommended. And you can see the difference. Some target requests were recommended as one time. And a brief overview of where we're at with the ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan funding. We were allocated 19.8 million total for the county, and we've committed 8.36 million toward capital projects, 6.53 million toward the Community Recovery Fund, and 3.65 million were committed in one-time over target requests for the 2022 budget. That leaves a remainder of 1.5 million that are recommended for one-time over target requests in 2023. And as just a reminder, the funds for ARPA must be obligated and the projects for projects by December 31st, 2024, and all funds, no, I'm sorry, 2023. And all funds must be spent and the projects completed by December 31st, 2026. So we're on a path to get all of our funds obligated and spent and projects complete. These are some of the major funded over target requests within target funding. It includes positions across 8 departments. Again, we'll be getting into more detail on these as we go along. Other major over target requests funded as target funding. We saw an increase in utilities, heat, and insurance across county facilities amounting to about $233,000. Upgrading the budget software for county administration and also financial management software is a piece of that. That's $80,000. Software upgrade for the county clerk, $70,000. 911 tower site maintenance amounts to about $65,000. and support for the municipal youth services system, $55,000. There are others, but these are some of the major over target requests. Some of the major over target requests funded as one-time include the various projects for reimagining public safety, including the staffing of the Community Justice Center, again, as well as some other pilot programs that we have already started, we're in the second year of, and others that are being proposed to launch this year. And again, we'll be hearing more detail about these in the coming budget meetings. Some other major funded one-time over target requests, of course, the airport operations and debt service, the Tompkins Cortland Community College capital program and workforce initiatives. We would be in year 2 of those costs. The Alcohol and Drug Council open access year 2 startup costs, and various one-time expenses requested for cooperative extension. Some other considerations in other areas, we're in the process of consulting on an organization-wide compensation study this year. We should have results toward the end of the year, and we've reserved $500,000 for future salary adjustments for this purpose. Also recommended an increase in the contingency fund for 2023. This is the fund we keep for unforeseen expenses or opportunities. Again, since we're in somewhat of a transitional year for departmental rollover, thought it was wise to add some funding there. And in the 2023 budget, in an attempt to forecast with a bit greater accuracy and not amass such fund balances at the end of the year, we factored in a vacancy rate for the first time. Annually, the budget to actual expenses for payroll averages between 3% and 5%. We're starting with a conservative recommendation of a 1% vacancy rate adjustment for 2023, pending new budget software that will provide better data to track actual vacancies. So this amounts to about $378,000 that can be budgeted. Some risks that we see possibly facing us in 2023, of course, a possibility of economic downturn. Further action by the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates to curb inflation may tip the economy into a recession in 2023. If this occurs, pressures will be exerted on the county budget in opposing directions, including a potential contraction in sales tax revenues, while at the same time a potentially greater demand for county services, including income supports and SNAP. And of course, the airport, which is subject to larger trends in the airline industry and the overall economy, including the national pilot shortage, changing trends in business travel, and the high cost of fuel. Many factors impacting its ability to regain self-sufficiency or outside of local control. And as previously mentioned, the required construction of the ARF SRE building has been deferred with permission of the FAA, but that is still out there. At this point in the process, our estimate of the 2023 property tax cap is 2.59%, meaning that we can increase the amount of taxes we levied over last year's amount by 2.9% or 1.36 million. That calculation is based on a number of factors per the state's tax cap formula. And in closing, all that I've just mentioned leads us to a 2023% budget with a recommended 1.46% levy increase, which meets the parameters set by the legislature in April, falls well below the tax cap, and sustains the county's operation and those of its sponsored agencies for the year to come. So I think that does it, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have at this point.
Okay, Mike Sigler, Rich John.
I actually have three questions. Could you go to slide, I think it was page 34? Because I had a question. You had said earlier there were 10 positions as part of reimagining. And I'm wondering if those 10 positions are kind of broken up. Like, obviously, all 10 positions aren't part of the CJC. They are
That's
some of those
correct.
positions in sheriff's, you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
And wouldn't those be just part of the sheriff's budget? They wouldn't be part of like a special budget?
correct. They are scattered across agency departmental budgets. Yes. I've just grouped them here. So for instance, the three for Community Justice Center, that would be part of county administration's budget.
Okay.
I haven't listed all of them here, but there are the two sheriff's clerks positions in there. Alternative response model. Let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The two therapists plus one deputy sheriff's.
And those would be under the sheriff as well?
Two would be under mental health, one would be under the sheriff.
Okay.
There are two sergeant positions that are under the sheriff's department as well that aren't listed.
Cool, that answers that. The airport money that we're gonna float them, that's not a write-off for us, right? I mean, we would hope that once the airport got back up to supposed levels, we would get that money back. I mean, do we treat this as a loan? How do we treat it? She's shaking her head. I don't know why though. Why wouldn't we treat it as a
loan to the airport?
You know, I don't understand. I mean, the airport has always been self-sustaining. I don't know why we wouldn't consider it continuing as self-sustaining and we floating it X amount of dollars until a certain point. Why would we just loan them? I don't know why we would just loan the money. That's why. Or why would we just give them money, I should say?
So the airport, we've been the recipient of a federal grant money for the airport, and it's ultimately falls on the county in terms of a responsibility to either make it whole or not. So if we choose not to make it whole, then I think it would be more difficult for the airport to regain ground it's lost. Essentially, when it is fully expected that the airport would become self-sufficient again and no longer require this, at which time they would be self-sustaining and be able to generate PFC revenues to pay for its debt and maintain its operations. But for this year and probably for the next a couple of years, realistically, they're not going to be able to do that without some form of subsidization.
I mean, not to get too into the weeds on it, but I mean, we put aside the 7 million out of the ARPA funds. Is this coming out of like a balance of the ARPA funds? Like, or is this just coming straight out of taxpayer dollars?
It's coming out
I mean, it
of,
really should come out of ARPA. I mean, this is a pandemic problem, so.
so in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, the airport received federal funds through ARPA, CARES, and CARISA that went into its operating budget and to keep the costs and fees low for airlines to be able to remain and to compete. So they were recipient of federal ARPA funds. I don't know that counties' ARPA funds could be spent toward the airport because they're not allowed to be combined with other projects that entail federal grants. So the airport did receive its own ARPA funds designated specifically for the airport.
My last question for now is more of a clarification. You had talked about the green fleet and it going from 7.3 million to 14.4.
Green facilities.
Green facilities, but that's not really because the cost, it's not entirely the cost going up. It's because we're doing stuff early. Is that a misunderstanding on my part or? Not
entirely. They changed the order of some projects, but it is really the cost escalation is the major factor for green facilities. However, if we don't complete the phase one of the project, we leave state grant funding on the table that is a real potential for us to be able to draw down upon completing that phase of the project. That's the rationale for completing at least phase one.
Great, thank you, Lisa.
So I would also like to add just one thing, that whenever we talk about the airport being self-sufficient, even 5 or 6 years ago, the airport was not self-sufficient, because if you'll remember, the county essentially donates in kind 100,000, 150,000.
25.
Yeah, something like that. And we've done that at least since I've been on the legislature, 4 or 5 years.
That's correct.
So, and then the second part of that is whenever we talk about ARPA funding and CARES funding, I know that there are a handful of us that have been on the legislature long enough to realize that we voted to actually give some of that money back to the airlines. And of course, one of the great airlines left after they received their CARES money. So we need to have a little bit of a long memory whenever it comes to that. Next is Rich John.
Yeah, thank you. Nice presentation. One of your slides, you indicated I think it was a 2.2% reduction in fringe rate, which was surprising to me. And I was wondering if you could talk about the drivers for that.
Yeah, the major driver was, and I have it broken down. Where do I have it broken down? Further on in the budget book, but the major driver, pension costs, some reduction in our healthcare, health insurance costs due to the large changeover to the Platinum plan. And there was one other factor. I'd have to look it up for you, but.
So reaching agreements with bargaining units has helped us in that.
Yeah, but the larger driver was from New York State. Yep.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, Ann Corman and then Amanda Champion.
Thank you for the presentation. It was very easy to understand, at least from my point of view, and I appreciate all the work that went into this. I have no idea how many hours, but I know from your department, our budget department. So thank you for everybody. And of course, all the work that goes into actually making these budget books to be delivered to us. So thank you so much. One question, just a clarification. If you could go back to slide 27.
I'm not sure. I can't see.
It was.
There we go. Yep. Capital program.
Okay, yeah, the very bottom, because I was trying to follow along with your the presentation in the packet here. And a lot of it follows along. So when I get to that part, I'm unclear. So in our book on page 5 of the, well, anyway, do you want me to just read it to you?
If you could, I don't have a book with me.
All right. It says the proposed 2023 budget includes an annual capital appropriation of 1.93% of the previous year's property tax levy to support capital investment equivalent to 1.011. So
I think that jives with.
Okay. It's, okay. So I guess I thought that it had said 1.9 million. So it is exactly the same. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Annie. Amanda Champion and Mike Lane.
Yeah, thanks so much, Lisa, and everybody on your team. There was one thing I didn't understand. It was towards the end, vacancy rate adjustment. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. So at any given time across the county's 700 some odd employees, there are vacant positions. So for instance, in county admin, we've had 2 for some time, which we hope to be filling. And those are our major departmental expenses, are often personnel costs. So those we are saving right now throughout the year, anytime there's a vacancy. And that money toward the end of the year, previously, a long time ago, that went into department rollover. That was no longer the case. That went into fund balance. Right now, it would just be going into fund balance and accumulating there at the end of the year. When realistically, we know at any given time, there's going to be some vacancies across departments. Our rough estimate, and again, this is pieced together without a very good system across the county for looking at vacancies at any given time. A rough estimate looks to be about 3.5%, and we have conservatively estimated at 1%.
Thanks.
Mike Lane and Randy Brown.
Just kind of following up on Rich's comments. The comptroller announced that pension rates were going to go up 2.5%. You said that we were seeing a decline. Is that because of the new classification of the employees versus the old classification in the pension tier?
In the tier structure.
Tier 4 versus tier 6, for example.
This was based on the information that we received from NISAC in the spring. I got something across my desk today about pension rates, and I need to rectify those two things. So.
Okay, yeah, I think it was just announced last week or something by the comptroller.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Randy Brown.
Yes, thanks, Lisa. I have a few questions. One of it's about process. I assume this is just the first meeting of the budget and discussion, so there'll be more detail on all these pieces you just talked about. Okay. The employee increases would be something I'd be really interested in when you get to that point. And then you talked about target OTRs. What are they?
So those are over target requests that are ongoing, and they would impact the tax levy. So there's something, once we obligate ourselves to it, that it recurs every year and versus one time.
And you talked about your budgeting software. I think you talked about it. Would that mean that we'd start to see every month budget numbers as far as what our budget was for a month and what we spent for the month?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Yep.
Lisa, I had a quick question in regards to our salaries. I know that we have performed a salary study, or we're just finishing up doing that. Whenever we have the actual data from that, is that going to be added to your recommended budget as well?
We put 500,000 aside for that to start to implement any recommendations that come out of that.
Okay. And when would the rollout for that be? Would it be as of January 1st?
So the compensation study is just getting underway now, and we would have to see what it tells us. And I think we would need to come up with a plan for implementation, because a lot of it's going to also involve our current contracts and where we're at there.
Okay. Thank you. Lee?
Two things. One is I'm assuming that that's handled as a reserve, as you do with the union contracts. You're dedicating something in that budget toward that future reconciliation. And that's accounted for. The others, could you go back to the slide of the use of the 19 point whatever $1 million in the recovery?
That is.
Toward the end, I guess.
Toward the end, okay. There we are.
Okay, and this kind of is to Mike's point, or maybe an answer back to Mike, is that you've committed in this proposal, 3.65 million for one-time OTR in 2022, 1.59 in 2023. And certainly a significant share of that 1.59 for next year is related to the airport recovery. That's fair to say?
On the macro level, yeah, probably.
On the macro level, there is a use.
It balances
The
out.
point I'm getting to is there is a continued use of the $19.8 million toward recovery of operations such as this.
One could say that, yes. However, I don't think that we could technically put those ARPA funds there. But yes, to your point,
But
I agree
that's
with that.
allowing us that capability to
Yes.
continue to operate some things that have seen some losses.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Deborah Dawson?
This isn't just a question. This isn't a question. I just wanted to compliment Lisa on a spectacularly cogent presentation. I think, isn't this your first budget as our official county administrator?
Yeah, I did one last year, but I wasn't official.
Right. And
I was
it's
acting.
certainly the first budget you did with our new budget director, Norma
Mhm.
Jane, who is here to take the accolades. But I think you and Norma and Samantha and everyone else who's worked on this have done an excellent job, and I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions in regards to our 2023 budget?
Vote on it now. And
Let's do that. Okay,
And take the next 2 months off.
thank you. Lisa, do you have anything else to report for us tonight?
The only other thing, just to mention, we're not having a reimagining public safety update this time around, but that per our agreement with the city on the Community Justice Center, and as was mentioned during the public officials privilege of the floor, that Mona Smiley is going to Common Council this week to share the 2023 plan with Common Council for reimagining, and also the updated 2022 for the remainder of 2022 plan for their review and feedback and hopefully approval.
Thank you.
And that's also will be coming to the Public Safety Committee this month as well.
And Corman?
Just one more question. I know we usually get with this big budget book, a schedule of what nights each department will be presenting. And just wondering if you want to go over again who's going to be presenting at least for this Thursday, and if you have an idea of when we might be getting the schedule.
I sent it to you.
Oh, we have it?
Yeah, I sent it to you.
Oh, during this meeting? I was paying attention and not checking my emails. Just saying.
But I'd
Thank
be
you.
happy to let you know that
Okay, great.
this Thursday from 4:30 on, we have first mental health and public health, followed by the sheriff and the jail, the Department of Emergency Response, and Department of Social Services.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Lisa? See none. Thank you, Lisa. Great job. Next is Bill Troy, County Attorney.
Nothing to speak of now. Microphone. I have nothing to report now, but I think during our session, you'll see it.
Okay. And next is Department or Director of Finance, Rick Snyder.
Howdy.
Rick.
Good to see you all. I have 2 months of sales tax information to share with you. I'll go as quick as I can here and I'll share my screen so we can first look at June and then we'll look at July. You should be viewing the June sales tax distribution summary. And if you see here in the middle portion, you can see that for the month of June, we were actually down. This is uncommon for this year, but we were down a whopping 14%. That's just the month of June. Still, if you move over here to the year-to-date figure, you can see that we're up year-to-date 10.22%. So halfway through the year, we're above last year's June number by 10.22%. The total receipts for the year were a little over $21 million compared to about $19.1 million back in 2021. And again, because we're halfway through the year, when we're looking at it on June 30th, you can see the budget figures down here at the bottom The gross budget, we're at 55.5%. The net budget, we're at 52.9%. So we're well above the 50% mark in sales tax. And then I've included the little graph here that you're accustomed to seeing for this month of June. And that's this turquoise line here. It's well below the previous year, 2021, and it's well below 2019. But the good news is, if you look at it as far as the whole second quarter, which is April, May, and June combined, you can see that for the second quarter, we're 1.53% up from the second quarter of last year. And again, being well over 55.5% and 10.22% year to date is a really good signal for halfway through the year. And to make it even sweeter, we do have July's receipts recorded, and I'll share that with you here now. You can see July's, just for the month of July in this midsection, you can see we're at 9% above July in 2021. So the total sales tax figure, the county portion only, was $24,670,803 compared to $22,418,362 last year. And that represents an increase of $2,252,441 above our receipts for last year as of the end of July. And again, as of the end of July, we're at 10.05% year to date ahead of last year's budget. And we should only be at 58.3% for 7 months out of the year, and gross sales tax is at 65.1%. So again, we're exceeding last year's figures and we're beating our budget considerably. And then the last graph here shows turquoise line that we're considerably above all the other years here portrayed for the month of July. And that's all I have for tonight. I'll take any questions if you have some.
Mike Sigler.
Hi, Rick. Is there any way to estimate how much of that is, frankly, the increase, how much of that is just attributable to the increase in prices? I mean, taxing 8% of $5 gas is a lot different than taxing 8% of $3 gas.
It's not. We don't get, a breakdown that shows the economics behind or the drivers behind. We do get some sector figures knowing that fuel is so much higher this year than the previous year. That's a big driver. And the general overall inflationary impacts upon us tend to drive sales tax higher. But one can only make broad speculative guesses as to why the figures are so good for this time. We'll take what we get and we'll see what the latter half of the year has in store for us. But as Lisa mentioned in her budget presentation, you have to be somewhat conservative in the sales tax forecasting. That's a good idea to back out the two aberrant years, like the highest year and the lowest year. It's good practice to back those two figures out when trying to come up with what your average sales tax increase is. So I know compared to what I shared with the financial presentation last month, looking at 2021, we're going to exceed our budget this year fairly certainly. And I know that the budget for next year it's not as clear looking 12 or even 10 months down the road than it is looking at it just 2 or 3 months down the road. I see us in pretty good shape for the end of this year, though.
All right. Nice, Rick.
Any other questions for Rick Snyder?
And that's all I have for tonight.
Well, thank you, Rick. Good news.
Welcome.
Appreciate
Good
it.
news.
Okay, it is 7:18. Why don't we do a break? We'll do it a little bit early and we will come back at 7:30. Feeling generous tonight. Okay, we are recording and I gave you guys 12 minutes and clearly people didn't know what to do with those extra 2 minutes. So we're gonna go ahead and start up at 7:28. And are there any resolutions to be added or withdrawn from the agenda this evening? I see none. Let's move on to our standing and special committees. Public Safety Committee, Rich John, Chair.
Thank you. The Public Safety Committee. I'm trying to remember the date we met. Let's see. Thank you for the light. On to August 18th, and we had a good meeting. We had a long discussion about the functionality of the jail and what possible changes we might be looking at recommending to the Facilities and Infrastructure Committee. We're also trying to schedule a visit to some local neighboring jails that have pod systems to look at how they're set up. And any legislator would be invited once we have a date, if anybody's interested in going. The next meeting of Public Safety will be on September 15th at 3 o'clock. And I just mentioned our jail numbers are at 40 with 4 board outs.
Thank you, Rich. Any questions for Rich? Veronica?
Yeah, I thought we did have a date for the jail visits, or is that not actually set? September 14th, the sheriff emailed about.
Is that confirmed? Yes, I believe you're right. It's September 14th, if anybody's interested. It's a full day trip.
And I would encourage anyone that has not seen the surrounding jails, there could be a decision that we're making in the next few years to perhaps build a jail. We haven't really had the conversation yet, but it's good to see what others are offering and the systems that are working and not working for the surrounding communities. So, Rich, and who would they reach out to if legislators are interested in joining?
To the sheriff.
Okay.
And that is a good reminder, just for clarity. We have not made a decision of any kind on making any changes to our jail. It's just, we were charged as part of our goals for this year. The Public Safety Committee said it would examine the functionality of our current system and what we might do to make our jail function better. For example, we talked about having sufficient classrooms and improving the meeting space for visitors. The holding cells, and I'm going off the top of my head, but we now have the centralized arraignment part at the Sheriff's Department. It's using some of the road patrols training space. It would probably be better to have a dedicated space for that and to reconfigure the holding cells so that people who are being held for arraignment could be held there. And also perhaps having some space for 16 and 17-year-olds if New York State were to develop a more nuanced policy on how they could be held. But at any rate, no decisions made.
Okay. Thank you, Rich. Any questions for Rich John? Deborah Dawson?
Not really a question, just an observation. Several years ago, this topic came up and quite a few of us actually did the tour at that time. So if you haven't had the opportunity, as Shauna says, it's well worth participating.
Thank you, Deb. Okay, next is the Health and Human Services Committee meeting or committee. Dan Klein, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Health and Human Services Committee next meets on September 19th at 3 o'clock. We've got quite a bit on the agenda, including Sunflower House is going to be checking in with us. They're in the midst of a 3-year OTR, and so they're going to give us, I guess, sort of an update. We are going to get an update from the public health and mental health departments. As you might recall, in July, we had a joint meeting with the Public Safety Committee, and we asked a lot of questions, and I call them homework assignments that they were going to get back to us with information about. And so they're going to have that information for us, including recommendations about how to set up some kind of opioid task force, recommendation on how to spend our opioid settlement money, recommendation on distribution of fentanyl test strips, and some other things we'd asked them to come back to us with. And then also, last month, we had another long presentation about the TIDES proposal, and that the next step for us was that Lisa was going to meet with the department heads of the relevant departments and really take some time to digest the proposal and talk about some county responses to that proposal. And so we're going to get a report on that meeting with the department heads.
Any questions or comments for Dan, Ann Corman, and then Randy Brown?
Thanks for your update, Dan. I'm not sure if you mentioned this, maybe I missed it, but the Sunflower House, where they're going to give us a tour on Friday the 9th at noon. So I know Sean and I signed up for that.
Thank you. I signed up as well. Yep.
Great. Thanks, Annie. Randy Brown?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to mention that I was on the Commons, and the REACH organization was giving a presentation on Narcan use and some other things. I had quite a conversation with them. One of the things they mentioned that they already have 50 people in hotels in the summer, which is extremely high number, given an inclination of what may happen this winter. And they also mentioned that that one of their nurses goes to the encampments twice a week. There was a long discussion about other services they provide, but I know, Dan, you've reached out to REACH, but they definitely want to be part of the conversation. So I share that.
Thank you, Randy. Help keep me reminding me to keep them in the loop as this topic comes up, please.
Yeah, and they REACH did reach out to me via email, I think earlier today, actually, and was questioning some of the opioid settlement funding, because it seems like they might be a good candidate for some of that money. And they might have a proposal that will be coming forth for some recovery funds. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that during, at the very beginning and throughout COVID, I found it really interesting that they would partner with OAR as well as St. John's and go out to the encampments, and they did telemedicine like I've never seen it before. They would have one person, which might be a nurse, it might be a medical assistant, actually go out to the encampments with an iPad, and then a nurse practitioner or a prescriber would be on the other side. And it was a great way to have, quick, efficient, and, really timely healthcare for people that don't traditionally come in, want to walk in the hospital or seek out treatment. So I thought that was, it's nice to have that unconventional method so that people get served. Any other questions or comments for Dan? Okay, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Mike Lane, Chair.
Thank you. We met on August 18th, and I'll mention a couple of things. We had a truly fine presentation about our Tompkins County fleet, the electrification of our vehicles, from Terry Carroll, and he's our fleet manager. And I hope everyone got a copy of that email to them, because the PowerPoint on that. We're making good progress, both with the vehicle purchases and the installation of charging stations. We had a presentation from Arel Lamaro about the Human Services Building exterior, where there's been a lot of work to clean up, to do some landscape revisions and trimming, so that the camera work there is better, showing not blocking the cameras, I should say. I thought his crew had done a really nice job making the Human Services Building look very attractive. As promised, we talked about the Red House. at Tioga Street that we purchased with the dental building. It's troublesome because it is in need of work, and yet it has a historic nature. And so the question and the discussion went from, shall we take it down? Should we sell it? Should we do the asbestos abatement before we sell it? And I think the conversation proceeded to the point where folks felt that we need to think about marketing the building, possibly with keeping the land underneath and doing a very long-term ground lease for that. We will be having further discussions about it at our next meeting, which is September. What, Kathy? I can't remember.
September 15th, I think.
All right. Well, at that meeting, you're all invited to come to that and talk about the Red House, your opinions and your thoughts. We want to make sure that it's an open process and all the legislators can look at that. There will be a resolution for us to consider, which is being prepared by county administration. The last thing I'll mention is that there was a meeting this morning about the Game Farm trail crossing, Game Farm Road trail crossing between the trail from the town of Ithaca and the trail into the town of Dryden. There's some concerns there, or a lot of concerns there, about the safety of the crossing. The towns are naturally anxious to get that open. Currently, the entrances to the road from both sides are barricaded. Jeff Smith discussed the county's study of that and the need for to move cautiously. There probably needs some sculpting of a fairly dangerous curve, a vertical curve, I should say, that once it's cut down would improve the sight distance for stopping. The state has approved a reduction in the speed limit from 55 miles an hour to 45 miles an hour, but did not approve going down to 35 miles per hour, which would have meant that they wouldn't have to put in some possible very expensive crossing signals. I think we left the meeting this morning making progress. The towns, I should say, will be putting forth a permit application to the county to begin making some improvements such as signage, possibly things like rumble strips, other things that would have to be looked at and approved by the county. But I felt encouraged by today's meeting, which I had thought we were a little off on the wrong track previously. But I certainly would defer to Greg since it's his district. And those are some of the things I wanted to talk to you about. Randy, is there anything you would like to mention? Okay.
Thank you, Mike. Any discussion for facilities and infrastructure? Okay. Thank you, Mike. Next is the Government Operations Committee, Amanda Champion, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Government Operations met last Thursday. I'll just mention two things. We had a pretty long conversation with Jay Franklin about assessment and his proposal that we move away from 100% annual assessment to a 3-year cycle. And that's something that he has never wanted to do. But with the crazy state of the market in recent years, he feels like that is going to be the best option. They simply don't have the staff and the resources to keep it at 100%. So it was a really good conversation. It was towards the beginning of the meeting. I would recommend going and watching if you want to learn more. We had a lot of questions. I'm not sure all of us fully understood everything. It's a challenging thing to understand, but and I'm sure Jay would be willing to talk with anyone more about it. I guess that resolution probably will be coming to our next legislature meeting. And then the other thing that we briefly discussed, most of you probably know that the Independent Redistricting Committee met a couple weeks ago now, and they went through some other options. They looked at the resolution that the legislature sent to them. They looked at some maps again. Also a very interesting meeting if you have the time to go and hear their conversation. But in the end, they did decide to reaffirm their decision to send the legislature what they sent us before. So a 16 member legislature with what I think are pretty equitable maps. So that, so obviously, as you know, we had a public hearing at the last legislature meeting. So that part of the process is done. And that resolution for us to have further discussion and to vote on will be coming to us at our next meeting. So I'm happy to take questions, and then I have some resolutions.
Randy Brown.
Thanks, Amanda. First, just a comment. I'm arranging with Jay Franklin for the new legislators to meet with him later this month. So he gave me some dates. I'll be setting that out. But a question, I think this is government operations. So it's regarding our fund balances and how they're invested and where the money sits. Is that a government operations?
I think it's more budget. Yeah.
Budget capital. It'd be nice to see how that really plays out and how the money is distributed and how it's invested. It's a lot of money, obviously, in our fund balances. And with interest rates going up, it could be $500,000 more in revenue for us. So I'm just curious how that's invested. And so asking that. So.
If I may, I believe that Rick periodically updates us on what the county's investment policy is. I don't know.
Hasn't been since I've been here, but we'd like to see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for Amanda? Okay.
All right. So the first resolution is Resolution F, authorization for county administrator to enter into a shared services intergovernmental agreement with New York State Information Technology Services and the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services. And I've moved that.
Seconded by Mike Lane.
And this is pretty much essentially what it says. It's a shared services agreement for numerous counties to come together, share data, and coordinate all across the state. I see Greg Potter's name on the screen. I think if anyone had questions, he would be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Ann Corman?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, when you mention Homeland Security, does that expose any information that, that we've had people come to us, from various groups of people that are, for instance, are incarcerated or are people that could be using our services, that this exposes them in any way to Homeland Security?
I would look to Greg, even though he's very dark there.
Sorry, the lighting in this room is terrible. The answer to that, Ann, is no. This is just collecting data from endpoints that the county manages that collect information on malware and spyware and forwards it to the Joint Operations Center. It has nothing to do with anything beyond that. It's just that as a department in the state, they provide a source of funding that now includes cybersecurity.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Any other questions on the resolution? Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
14 ayes, 0 nos.
Thanks, Greg, for being here. The next resolution I have is Resolution G, transfer of employee safety and health coordinator position from the Health Department to county administration. And I move that.
Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Lee Shirtliff.
And this is, Lisa might be able to better explain, but this was a position that seemed to make more sense in county administration. So that's where they would like to move it.
Any questions or comments? Okay, let's vote.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
14 ayes, 0 nos.
Great. And then the last one is Resolution H, update to Administrative Policy Manual, Policy 03-23, use of public funds for employee reward and recognition. And I move that.
Thank you. Mike Lane seconds.
And this is actually a new policy. It's always fun to get policies in GO. We haven't had that many this year, honestly. So this is a new one, pretty self-explanatory, just how and what we can use public funds for in terms of employees.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion? Mike Sigler?
No, I just wanted to say, I know this was difficult for some departments, and I know you put a lot of work in to kind of get around those difficulties. So I appreciate the effort you put into that.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else for discussion? Okay. Lee, did you have a question?
I was just going to ask Lisa, the discussion among department heads, were they okay with this?
Yeah, we probably had a couple of months of discussion at department head meeting, and some were absolutely fine with it, and others had not realized the actual restrictions that we are under. But I think that the news now is that, or the standardization is just helpful for everyone to understand what the rules are and under which rules we're operating. So I think, and we took a couple of months to get at the policy so that it makes sense for everyone, and we incorporated some feedback to make it better. So.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Ann Corman?
Thank you. So wondering for retirement celebration or retirement parties, so that's allowable, but through Human Resources Department funds. Is that correct?
Yeah. So for instance, the 25-year club dinner falls under that, and that is allowable per the Office of State Comptroller and case law. But for instance, for a department to spend departmental funds to take everyone to dinner to celebrate someone's retirement is not. So there are lots of scenarios that you have to play out.
So under milestone recognitions, is that covers retirement?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Covers like 5-year, 10-year, and that's organized through HR, and that's allowable.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions on the policy? Okay, let's go ahead and vote. Roll call.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Any other questions, comments, discussion for Amanda Champion in government operations? Okay, thank you, Amanda. Next up, we have Planning, Development, and Environmental Quality Committee and Corman Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As it's getting a little late, I'll keep this down to like 15, 20 minutes.
That's
my
good.
Presentation.
Sounds great.
We met, our committee met on August 22nd. And a couple of the highlights, the priority trails is going to be updated thanks to Fernando Aragon and Nick Hembold. So they'll be working on that. And so also what I thought was interesting was the closed Danby landfill is getting money from a NYSERDA program to install photovoltaic energy, electric producing PV system on top of the landfill. So I thought that was good use of that money and good reuse of that land. The draft RFP for the code official study going out from our planning department should be ready by mid-September. And that's to cover administrative sharing, efficiencies, maybe some training. So we're gonna keep you updated on that. One of the last thing I just wanted to mention is that Jackie Muliso, our Director of Office of Employment and Training at the Tompkins Workforce, is leaving, or actually has left by now. And so the acting director will be Melissa, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, Casey. And so she came, Jackie came to our meeting and introduced her to us, and also gave an update of a program they had been working on. And the program was for employers to get training and kind of like a certification on diversity, increasing their diversity, equity, and inclusion skills. And what they found out is some research came out that really the change needs to be very structural, not just you get a training. So they're going to redo that program and look back and to make sure that they can actually help organizations make some structural changes, from the top down. And they have a couple of organizations and businesses that are going to help pilot that program. So they're going to have to re-scrap or redo that. And then we took a straw poll to kind of let the money that we approved for them. It was $10,000 to let that sit while they come back with redoing that program. And our next meeting is September 26th. That's Monday at 1:30.
Thank you, Ann. Any questions for Ann? Randy Brown?
No questions. I just wanted to add that Veronica, Ann, and I met with the Planning Sustainability Department 2 weeks ago. It had a nice meeting and they're fairly fully staffed. So we were there for a good hour and a half, I think. And it was good to learn.
That's great. Any other questions, comments, discussion for Ann Corman? Okay, thank you, Annie. You had about 13 minutes left.
Oh, I could say a few more things.
No, that's all right. Moving on, Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee, Dan Klein, Chair.
Thank you. I mean, we've covered most of it already. There's just a few small things I wanted to mention that didn't get mentioned yet. One is that there's been a little bit of an unsettled question as we pondered the guidelines about how to treat municipalities that might want to apply for the Community Recovery Fund. So I just wanted to mention what we settled on for that, which is municipalities in Tompkins County can apply for that money if they want. One of the questions we will ask applicants is, did they already get ARPA funds? And if so, how did they spend them? So that question will be particularly relevant to the municipalities. So we will take that into account. It's not disqualifying, but it's just one of the pieces of information that we'll ask them. And then the other thing I just want to mention is that we agreed that after the October 31st deadline, and then maybe another week where MRB Group is going to really dig in and sort through all that stuff, all the applications. Shortly after that, we, the committee, are going to have to meet um, quite heavily, quite in November, in mid to late November, in order to get the recommendations to the legislature by the December 6th meeting. So we've agreed that we're going to set up three-hour meetings in the second half of November. So committee members and associated staff, if you have not responded to the doodle poll yet about those, when to have those meetings, please do. So the meeting I was just reporting on was August 24th, and our next meeting will be on Monday, October 3rd at 10:30. That's my report.
Mike Lane.
Dan, you mentioned municipalities qualifying. What about schools or charter schools, for example?
That's a good question. I mean, we did say educational institutions with a budget under 200 million. We were thinking about colleges when we said that, so I'm not sure exactly how we would handle, a lower, earlier education. I don't know the answer to that directly.
Okay.
I will find out.
Greg Muzzy.
Thank you. Dan, just a quick question. When you mentioned municipalities, you mentioned the sort of informational questions that you would ask them, right? How did they receive ARPA funds and how did they spend them? For any municipality watching or listening, do you have any thoughts on what you or the committee would want the answer to that be, or how that will be ranked or considered or evaluated? What response would put someone in front of another municipality, and what response would put someone below another municipality?
I'm sure I can tell you what I have in mind, but I just want to be really clear that I'm just one member. So don't, I'm not the guy that decides this stuff. So if a municipality received, let's say, $200,000 in ARPA funds and hasn't spent it yet, and they're asking for ARPA funds from us, we're going to really want to know what that's about. Now, if it turns out that they're asking to combine ours with theirs to do a project that costs that much, then that seems like a, reasonable request. Also, if they've already spent their money and they want to do more, I think that would be seen favorably as well. If they were looking to get our money but hadn't spent their money and weren't planning to, I would imagine that would be received negatively.
Okay, any other questions for Dan? Comments, discussion? Okay, I see none. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee, Deborah Dawson, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll be meeting next Monday, the 12th at 3 p.m. We have a variety of budgetary resolutions to handle. The one of note to my mind is the resolution to bond for the increased costs of the green phase one of the green facilities capital plan. That was passed through facilities and infrastructure at their last meeting, and we will be carrying it forward. Other than that, of course, this is the time of year when BCP just kicks back and relaxes. So yeah, we'll see you all at the expanded budget committee meeting on Thursday night.
Any questions, discussion, topics for Deborah Dawson? Okay, thanks, Deb. Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee, Henry Grandison, Chair.
Yes, we met at the end of August. We met with the Living Wage Working Committee, which was sent out a couple of years ago and came back to us. We had a discussion about their report. They interviewed employers in 2019, also 2021. They've had a mixed bag. Some large employers do not want a living wage, but most people seemingly do. And so we basically decided that we would send it to another committee because really it started at another committee, and we're looking at which committee that is. Maybe Health and Human Services. It may be another committee. And we decided also later on that that we would look at it after budget to really examine whether or not we can do a living wage law in Tompkins County.
Okay, thank you, Henry. Any questions, comments, discussion for Henry? Dan Klein?
Yes, thank you, Henry. Can you tell me who the Living Wage Working Committee is?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
I know it's Ian Greer. I know it's Pete Myers. I know that Leslie McBean Claiborne was on it, Anna Cullis was on it. I'm not sure who else. Maybe Ann or Veronica can tell me who else was on the committee.
I would just suggest getting that from Pete Myers, because there was a whole long list of people, and then you'd have an accurate list.
Yeah, and quite honestly, it might not be a matter of reconvening those 5-10 people. It might be a matter of us having a completely different conversation, because that was, 4+ years ago, and many of those people aren't actually around or live in town or able to be part of that group. So, Dan, I don't think Henry meant to dump that massive topic into HHS, which is already a pretty large committee. But I think as a legislature, we'll probably have to discuss, if we want to move forward with this discussion, we certainly can. And where it belongs. Just for everyone's information as well, there was a study that was done by Lisa Horn, and I believe it was probably done in 2018 that discussed the idea of a living wage here in Tompkins County. And there were some major concerns based on the fact that many of the healthcare agencies locally receive reimbursement from Medicaid. And unfortunately, Medicaid does not reimburse to allow for people to make a living wage. The other issue that came out was the fact that many people that receive benefits through DSS, federal state benefits, once they make a certain amount of money, they're no longer eligible for those benefits. And so those were some of the issues that we had initially talked about in HHS, probably 3 or 4 years ago. So that is a massive topic, and I'm sure that we'll probably take it up at a later time, but we will need to discuss where to put that.
Shauna, if I may.
Yeah.
So I was just curious. I guess I was wondering about that committee. Was it a legislative committee? Was it was it housed at the Workers Center, or
No, it was an Anna committee that that Anna kind of put together and did work more or less outside of the legislature.
Okay, thank you.
And Veronica, and then Ann Corman.
Yeah, just to clarify, like they all said, I don't know who all is on the committee, but it was not, or the working group, but it wasn't the living wage working group as a whole that came and presented at WDIC. It was specifically 2 researchers, and a few other people came to watch, but Ian Greer and Cheyenne Osterreich, huge apologies if I'm mispronouncing her name. So, and I think they wanted it to be clear that they were not speaking for the entire working group. They were just presenting research results that they and their research collaborators had done. And then without, getting into a discussion, the benefits cliff is what it's called. The second thing Shauna mentioned came up in the research. So I'd encourage you to watch the meeting.
Yep.
The cliffhanger. Thank you. Ann, did you have a comment as well?
No, I was just going to add what Veronica already said. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Henry?
Nope, that was it.
Okay. Any questions or comments, discussion for Henry? Okay, thank you all. I wanted to place a little bit of a reminder that our executive order is going to end midnight September 12th for us to have remote meetings. And so what that means is that legislators, assuming that it does not get renewed, will then be expected to attend in person your committee meetings, your legislature meetings, in order to be counted as in attendance for our meetings. That does not mean that our staff is still welcome to join us on Zoom. as well as we can still have public comment if the chair of the committee would so wish to do that. Amanda Champion.
Yeah, I think I would just clarify, and maybe Bill or Kathy can correct me, but when we discussed this a couple months ago, the law that we put into effect did allow for legislators or committee members, if you have an extenuating circumstance or an illness, you can still attend from remotely, but you won't count towards quorum. I believe that was
Yes.
but you can still participate and you can still vote. But I think what we talked about at that time was that the encouragement is to make your best effort to be present in chambers at your meetings, unless there's something that prevents you from doing that.
And you have to have a good reason. I mean, you can't just decide you'd rather do it.
Right, your car broke down, you can't get the bus. I mean, that would count. You're ill, but you're well enough to, join the meeting. So there are some circumstances, but the preference is that everyone will be present.
Thank you. Ann Corman and then Dan Klein.
Just wondering if we could send that out, what was approved.
Bill or Kathy, can you?
It included things like childcare. And so regarding what you said about attending meetings, so that does not include the expanded budget meetings when we're not voting. Is that correct? So people could attend and participate in the expanded budget meetings remotely.
That is right, because we don't vote in the first.
Those aren't required meetings.
No, that's right.
Don't need to take attendance or.
Yeah. Is that right, Kathy? The boss is thinking.
Yeah, I don't know, because that meeting is still, the open meetings law still applies to that meeting, so.
But a quorum for that meeting
could be three legislators. No, it could be three legislators.
Really?
Yeah. During the presentations.
Oh, okay.
But
But not
when-
during the voting meeting.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
Okay, so we'll get an email just to make things a little bit clearer from Kathy. Okay. Are there any individual member filed resolutions this evening? I see none. And if I could have a mover for the minutes of our previous meeting, August 16th, 2022, moved by Veronica Pillar, seconded by Deborah Dawson. Any comments, discussion, questions? I see none. Let's do a roll call.
Amanda Champion?
Yes.
Deborah Dawson?
Yes.
Henry Grandison?
Yes.
Rich John?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
Yes.
Ann Corman?
Yes.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Greg Mezzi?
Yes.
Veronica Pillar?
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
Yes.
Travis Brooks?
Yes.
Randy Brown?
Yes.
Shauna Black?
Yes.
14 ayes, 0 noes.
Thank you. And if I can have a mover to go into executive session for the reason of contract negotiations and a personnel issue with a particular employee, and we will not be taking action.
Before we get there.
Yeah.
I did have one item. I was
Okay.
gonna ask.
Yeah.
I received a request to report on activities of the Industrial Development Agency. And I'm happy to do that. We talked some time ago about putting that on the agenda. I can just say that the IDA did not meet in July or August, so there really isn't a lot to report. But if that's the will of the legislature, I would be willing to do that.
Great. And can we add it as an agenda item or?
No, I would recommend maybe he report on it as an individual member.
Okay.
Or privilege of the floor for legislators.
It can't be an item.
It's not a committee of the legislature, so.
Okay. All right. Somebody can remind me, because I'll forget if I don't see it. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Rich. And if I could have a mover to go into executive session for contract negotiations, a personnel issue with a particular employee, and no action will be taken. Moved by Veronica Pillar, seconded by Deborah Dawson. And a roll call, please.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes,
14 ayes, 0 nos.
thank you. And why don't we take a few minutes break and we'll come back in about 4 minutes, 8:17.
Shauna, would you like me to attend or am I excused?
I think you are excused, Rick. Thank you.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks, you too.